They crushed the paper price down into the low 60s. The message was obvious. The rally is finished, the excitement is over, silver was just another speculative spike that finally ran out of steam. That's the story they want you to believe. And it isn't just misleading, it's dangerously incomplete. While most people were glued to flashing charts and red candles in New York, something far more important unfolded halfway across the world, something that makes short-term price action almost irrelevant. In South Korea, one of the most powerful industrial players on the planet quietly confirmed technical details that fundamentally changed the future of silver. Samsung SDI, one of the largest battery manufacturers on Earth, locked in the specifications for its next-generation solid-state battery production line. Headlines focused on flashy metrics, ultra-fast charging, extreme range, improved safety, 9-minute charging, nearly 900 miles of range, a so-called battery breakthrough. But the coverage missed the only detail that truly matters. The key ingredient isn't lithium, it isn't cobalt, it isn't nickel, it's silver. Not trace amounts, not decorative usage, structural usage. For the first time, silver isn't just being used as a conductor sitting on the sidelines of technology. It is being embedded directly into the chemistry of energy storage itself. Samsung's solid-state design relies on a silver-carbon nanocomposite layer that fundamentally alters how lithium behaves inside the battery. This is not speculative. It is published research, it is engineered science, and it solves the single problem that has blocked solid-state batteries for decades. To understand why this matters, you have to understand the weakness of conventional lithium-ion batteries. For over 30 years, the world has depended on liquid electrolyte cells. Phones, laptops, EVs, everything. They work, but they fail in a very specific way. Under stress, lithium forms microscopic needle-like structures called dendrites. These grow over time, eventually piercing the internal separator. When that happens, the battery shorts, overheats, and in many cases ignites. This is why fast charging has limits. This is why EV fires happen. This is why cold weather reduces range. The dream solution has always been solid-state batteries. No liquid electrolyte, no fire risk, faster charging, higher energy density. Every major automaker has promised them. Most failed. The dendrites always won. Until now. Samsung discovered that a silver carbon composite layer could act as a stable host for lithium ions. The silver distributes lithium evenly, preventing dendrite formation entirely. The result is a battery that is smaller, safer, faster, and dramatically more powerful. But the breakthrough comes with a cost. This technology requires silver measured in grams, not micrograms. Silver becomes an active material, not a background component. It becomes part of the battery's DNA, and the auto industry is preparing to scale this technology to millions of vehicles. That's the problem Wall Street hasn't priced in. The banks are playing a paper game. Samsung is playing a physics game, and physics always wins. Now that you understand the technology, the next step is confronting the consequence. It's one thing to say a new battery uses silver. It's another thing to measure what that actually means at global scale. This is where the story stops being exciting and starts becoming uncomfortable. Silver is already deeply embedded in the modern economy. Even before solid-state batteries enter mass production, the metal is under strain. A traditional internal combustion vehicle uses roughly 15 to 20 grams of silver spread across switches, control units, sensors, and electronics. Electric vehicles already push that higher, often between 30 and 50 grams, due to power electronics, inverters, and battery management systems. That increase alone has helped push the market into a persistent deficit. Supply has failed to keep up. Inventories have been drawn down, and the cushion that once existed has largely disappeared. But solid-state batteries change the equation completely. We are no longer talking about silver used on the margins. We are talking about coating the anode material of every single cell inside a massive battery pack. Samsung's own research suggests silver loadings measured in grams per kilogram of anode material. Some estimates, especially for long-range or high-performance vehicles, run far higher. Let's be conservative. Extremely conservative. Assume solid-state batteries add just 50 grams of silver per vehicle. That alone doubles the total silver content of many EVs. Now apply that to production numbers. Roughly 90 million vehicles are built globally each year. If only 10% adopt solid-state batteries, that's 9 million cars. At 50 grams per car, that equals roughly 29 million ounces of new annual silver demand. At first glance, that sounds manageable, until you realize this is the best-case scenario. If adoption reaches 30%, 40%, or 50%, which is exactly what automakers are targeting, and if average silver loading rises toward 150 or 200 grams per vehicle, the numbers explode. Automotive silver demand alone could jump by 100 to 200 million ounces per year. To put that in perspective, global mine supply sits around 830 million ounces annually. This single technology has the potential to consume a quarter or more of total production, just for batteries. And that silver has to come from somewhere. It can't come from inventories. The COMEX registered supply is thin and shrinking. It can't come from miners ramping production overnight. New mines take a decade or more to bring online. It can't come from recycling at scale because silver is dispersed across billions of small devices, making recovery expensive and inefficient. This is what makes the shift so dangerous for price stability. In the past, silver was an industrial additive. The amount used was small enough that price increases didn't matter. If silver doubled, manufacturers barely noticed. But when silver becomes a structural input, a major line item in a battery pack, the price suddenly matters a lot. At $60 an ounce, a few hundred grams of silver adds hundreds of dollars to a vehicle. At $100 an ounce, it adds far more. Automakers operate on thin margins. They can't absorb that easily, but they also can't remove the silver without reintroducing safety failures. They are trapped by chemistry. This is what transforms silver demand from elastic to inelastic. The metal isn't optional anymore. It's required. And once demand becomes mandatory, price stops being a deterrent and starts being a signal. The market hasn't absorbed that reality yet, but it will. Once you move past headlines and hype, you're forced to face a far more serious question. Even if the world fully commits to solid-state batteries, is there actually enough silver on Earth to support the transition? This is the calculation most institutions avoid, because the answer is deeply unsettling. Start with the world as it exists today, before solid-state batteries meaningfully scale. Global mine supply hovers around 830 million ounces per year. Recycling contributes roughly another 150 to 180 million ounces. On paper, total annual supply looks adequate, but demand already exceeds that number. Industrial use, electronics, solar panels, medical equipment, consumes roughly 600 million ounces annually. Jewelry and silverware take another 200 million. Investment demand fluctuates, but in recent years it has averaged well over 200 million ounces. Even without new battery technology, the system is running a deficit. Reserves are being quietly drained just to keep things functioning. Now layer solid-state batteries on top of that fragile balance. Using moderate assumptions, partial adoption, modest silver loading, you quickly add tens of millions of ounces of new demand. Under aggressive but realistic assumptions, that number climbs past 100 million ounces per year. That demand doesn't replace anything. It stacks on top of existing uses. At that point, industrial demand alone begins to challenge total mine output. This is the extinction equation. When essential industrial demand exceeds available supply, something has to give. Either prices rise violently, or certain uses are forced out of the market entirely. In that environment, silver stops behaving like a freely traded commodity and starts behaving like a rationed resource. Many critics wave this away with one word: recycling. It sounds reassuring, but it ignores how silver is actually used. Unlike gold, which is concentrated and easy to recover, silver is scattered. Tiny amounts are embedded across billions of devices: phones, laptops, circuit boards, solar cells. Recovering that silver often costs more than the metal is worth, so it ends up in landfills. Recycling rates remain low for a reason. Dispersion kills efficiency. Solid-state batteries don't solve this problem. Yes, they contain more silver, but that silver is locked away for years. A battery built in 2026 won't be recycled until the late 2030s or 2040s. The silver removed from circulation today won't return in time to relieve the shortage of the next decade. That leaves mining as the only theoretical solution. And here, reality hits another wall. Silver mines cannot be turned on like switches. It takes 10 to 15 years to move from discovery to production. Ore grades are declining, not improving. Mines today must process far more rock to extract the same amount of silver they did 20 years ago. Costs rise. Energy use rises. Political risk rises. At the same time, many of the world's largest silver-producing regions face growing instability. Mexico, which produces roughly a quarter of global supply, has tightened permitting. Peru faces recurring disruptions. Other regions are geopolitically constrained, so just as demand accelerates, supply growth slows. This creates a structural shortage, one that price alone cannot quickly fix. Silver isn't disappearing, but it is becoming functionally unavailable for discretionary use. In that environment, the market stops asking, "What is silver worth?" and starts asking, "Who is allowed to have it?" That shift has profound consequences. When a material becomes essential and scarce at the same time, markets don't behave politely. They lurch, they overshoot, and eventually they invite intervention. This is where the silver story moves beyond supply and demand charts and into politics, strategy, and power. Governments around the world have already committed themselves to electrification. Deadlines for internal combustion engines are written into law. Massive subsidies are flowing into battery factories, charging networks, and EV production. The transition isn't optional anymore, it's mandated. But mandates don't override chemistry. If solid-state batteries become the standard, and all signals suggest they will, silver demand becomes non-negotiable. Automakers won't be bidding against jewelry buyers or coin collectors. They'll be bidding against each other, with production schedules and regulatory deadlines on the line. That's when price stops being the main mechanism of allocation. At first, rising prices force marginal demand out of the market. Jewelry gets thinner, luxury uses decline, retail buyers hesitate. But if that isn't enough, and it likely won't be, governments step in. History is full of examples. When oil, uranium, or rare earths became strategic, free markets quietly took a backseat. Silver is heading down that same path. Once manufacturers begin warning that battery production could stall due to silver shortages, the conversation changes overnight. Silver is no longer a precious metal. It becomes a critical material tied directly to energy security, transportation policy, and national competitiveness. At that point, allocation matters more than price. Industrial users receive priority. Long-term contracts are signed. Strategic stockpiles are discussed. Retail availability tightens. The metal doesn't vanish, but access becomes restricted. Ownership moves upstream, closer to the source. Markets sense this shift long before it becomes official. Volatility increases. Paper prices swing wildly as futures markets struggle to reconcile physical scarcity with financial leverage. Discounts appear where supply is illusionary. Premiums explode where metal actually exists. This is where perception and reality diverge most sharply. A falling paper price does not mean abundance. Often, it means stress. Physical markets tell the truth faster than screens do. Rising premiums, longer delivery times, and shrinking inventories signal what futures markets try to hide. Manufacturers understand this. They don't wait for confirmation. They secure supply early, even at higher prices, because missing production targets costs far more than overpaying for raw materials. That behavior feeds on itself. Once the first major automaker publicly commits to large-scale solid-state production, others are forced to follow. No company wants to be left without access to the metal that powers the next generation of vehicles. This creates a feedback loop. Demand pulls forward, inventory disappears faster, and price becomes secondary. By the time the story is widely accepted, positioning opportunities are gone. This is the uncomfortable phase of every resource transition. The market resists the idea. Analysts dismiss it as niche. Prices lag reality. Then, suddenly, everything reprices at once. Silver is approaching that inflection point. At this point, the full picture should be clear. What began as a routine price smash in a paper market turns out to be almost meaningless when placed next to what is unfolding at the industrial level. Short-term volatility does not cancel long-term necessity. In fact, it often disguises it. Silver is no longer just drifting higher on speculative interest or cyclical demand. It is being pulled into the center of two of the largest transformations of the modern economy: energy storage and transportation. Solar already laid the groundwork. Solid-state batteries accelerate it dramatically. This is why recent price weakness doesn't signal failure. It signals disconnect. Markets are still treating silver like it belongs to the old world, where it functioned as a hybrid asset, part precious metal, part industrial input, largely interchangeable and easily sourced. That framework no longer applies. The silver-carbon anode changes silver's role entirely. It upgrades the metal from optional to essential. Once that happens, the rules change. In the old model, demand could be delayed or substituted. In the new model, demand is locked in by physics and engineering. Batteries either work safely or they don't. There is no spreadsheet workaround for dendrites. There is no financial derivative that replaces an element on the periodic table. That is why the coming adjustment will not be gradual. For a long time, price can remain wrong. Paper markets can suppress signals. Analysts can recycle outdated assumptions. But once physical demand asserts itself, once manufacturers start competing for real ounces, price catches up violently. This has happened before. Not with silver, but with other metals that quietly cross the line from useful to indispensable. The pattern is always the same: disbelief, underinvestment, sudden scarcity, and finally repricing. The final stage is always psychological. Volatility increases, headlines grow louder, conflicting narratives compete for attention. Sharp drops are engineered to shake conviction. The goal is not accuracy, it's exhaustion. Weak hands exit, strong hands accumulate. Supply migrates toward those who understand what's happening before it becomes consensus. Nothing about a short-term dip changes the core reality. Silver demand is becoming structural. Supply is constrained by geology, politics, and time. Recycling cannot close the gap quickly enough. Mining cannot respond fast enough. And substitution compromises safety in technologies that cannot afford failure. That combination leads to only one outcome. Silver doesn't disappear. It repositions. It moves upstream. It becomes strategic. It stops being priced purely by sentiment and starts being valued by necessity. When that transition completes, the old price framework no longer applies. This is why the current moment matters, not because of a candle on a chart, but because the industrial world has already moved on. Factories are being designed today around silver-dependent chemistry. Those decisions cannot be undone cheaply or quickly. The demand they create is locked in for years. By the time this is obvious to everyone, it will already be reflected in the price. The paper game can continue for a while. The physics game will decide the ending.